Everything starts on a desolate battlefield, covered in the fallen warriors beneath a raging storm. A wounded warrior grips his blood-stained sword while watching a dark figure in the distance. The bizarre and terrifying leader of the Sun and Moon cult watches everything with a completely insane smile. He lets out a chilling laugh and mocks his opponent, calling him the Sword Emperor. Nam Young-shin appears severely injured, struggling to breathe before his rival. Even after losing one of his arms, the brave leader of the Southern Sky Palace refuses to fall. He grinds his teeth in rage and asks if the villain truly finds all this tragedy amusing. In a flashback, one of his loyal disciples warns that the demonic cult has invaded Anhui province. Young Shin reflects that a true hero's sword carries great responsibility and never retreats. He asks his men if they carry the blade of a warrior or just the fear of a... All the disciples gather and shout with pride that they will fight alongside their leader to the end. Back in the present, he looks at the bodies of his allies and painfully remembers everything he taught them. Gripping his weapon firmly, he acknowledges that his men fulfilled their duty exactly as they were trained, with a look of determination and fury. The warrior declares that it is now his turn to fight. He remembers that the proud palace disciples never retreated and always marched forward. They all fought to the end to fulfill their responsibility to the path of martial art. The enemy leader steps off his throne with a violent stomp that completely cracks the floor, sitting on his stone throne. The villain mocks those who tried to prove their righteousness in combat. Young Shin is furious and questions how such a monster dares to talk about having fun. The cult leader just flashes an even more terrifying and blood-soaked smile while laughing at others' suffering. He provokes the hero, saying he does not even have the strength to hold his own sword properly. Even while trembling, the warrior raises his shining weapon and prepares for the final confrontation. The villain asks if the Sword Emperor is truly ready to handle the consequences of this. Young Shin firmly responds that his sword is an extension of himself and that he can handle anything. The cult leader snaps his fingers and questions if he believes the sky will remain the same forever, without wasting time. The warrior charges at high speed with a devastating attack against the enemy. The two powerful combatants clash in a deadly duel, releasing an immense amount of energy. A quick and relentless strike tears through the air during the decisive clash. With a perfect strike, the cult leader's head is severed amidst an explosion of blood. The hero breathes heavily as the blood of his terrible adversary rains down around him, even decapitated. The villain's head keeps smiling and recites a bizarre prophecy about the sun and the moon. Young Shin is shocked to see the head floating in the air, shrouded in a mysterious purple mist. A third eye opens on the villain's forehead, proclaiming that they will never be separated. A gigantic explosion of dark purple energy consumes the entire battlefield at once. The brilliant, destructive light takes over the entire area in a terrifying display of power. The scene finally changes to a calm day where the wind blows softly through the tree. Young Shin grumbles in pain while using his sword as a crutch to stand up. He realizes with sadness that the terrible confrontation ended in mutual destruction for both sides. Looking around, he sees only black smoke rising from the bodies of all his companions. With great effort, the warrior begins to walk slowly, leaving trails of blood on the ground. Without the strength to continue, his legs give out, and he collapses heavily to the ground. Kneeling among the swords of his allies, he laments that his title of emperor is worth nothing. Crying in pain, he apologizes to his disciples for not being able to protect any of them. With his face covered in tears and blood, the exhausted hero looks up with deep sadness. At that moment, the dark clouds begin to clear, revealing a bright light above. He stares at the clear sky and realizes that the vastness represents the justice he wanted so much to defend. Observing the blue expanse, he questions how someone who failed so much could have the right to look at it. Suddenly, he spits out a large amount of dark blood, showing he has reached his absolute limit. In his final thoughts, he wonders if everything would have been different if he were just a little stronger. He closes his eyes and wonders with bitterness if regret is the only thing left on his blade. Someone starts calling the name Mumyong, and the protagonist wakes up startled in an unknown place. Suddenly, a muscular man appears and kicks the young man on the ground with extreme violence. The protagonist lies there, not understanding a single thing about what is happening around him. The aggressor shouts irritably, calling the boy lazy and asking if he is still sleeping. Young Shin realizes he is in someone else's body and is extremely confused by the whole situation. He ends up taking another violent kick and lets out a moan of pain, unable to defend himself. The brute continues shouting, saying he saved that weak orphan and he should be very grateful. The young man blocks the next attack while trying to remember how he died in the previous battle. He realizes it is not a dream and clearly remembers having been the powerful Sword Emperor. Young Shin remembers the floating head of the cult leader and wonders if his soul challenged the heaven. When the aggressor tries to kick him again, the hero realizes the man's movements are very slow, with extreme ease. The young man reaches out and catches the man's foot firmly in mid-air. The muscular man is completely shocked and frozen to see his attack stopped so easily. He tries to pull his leg back, but notices that the boy's strength today is absurdly devastating. The protagonist slowly stands up with an extremely dark and scary aura around him. He focuses his sharp, cold gaze directly on the man who was just mistreating him without mercy. The aggressor feels a terrible killing pressure and is paralyzed with fear before that gaze. With a quick movement, the hero knocks the giant man to the ground with almost no effort. He stands there, staring at the fallen man with a dark and completely intimidating demeanor. Then, the boy grabs the sheathed sword that was on the man's waist very quickly. His eyes shine with disdain as he faces the coward who was abusing someone defenseless. The hero calmly says that someone who beats defenseless children has no right to carry a sword. Other warriors nearby start laughing and mocking the shame the man is going through. They say it is pathetic for him to be dominated by a weak boy who has ruptured meridians, humiliated in front of everyone. The man grinds his teeth, taken by a blind rage against the young man. He screams in hatred, asking if having ruptured meridians made the boy completely crazy. The man advances furiously toward him, trying to grab him to recover his lost honor. With impeccable reflexes, the protagonist draws the sword from the scabbard with extreme speed. In a single blink of an eye, the hero makes a precise cut and severs the aggressor's arm. The warriors who were watching it all are totally perplexed and left open-mouthed. Their shock is so great that no one can say a single word before that scene. The man falls to his knees, screaming in pain desperately while holding his severed arm. With a cold and authoritative voice, the boy orders the man to lift his head to face him, trembling with pain and fear. The man bows before him in a sign of total submission on the ground. He begins to cry in despair, silently begging for his own life to the young man. In his mind, the man sees the gigantic and imposing image of the Sword Emperor behind the boy. He realizes in a panic that the young man in front of him is definitely not the weak Mumyong. The man notices that all the boy's shyness and weakness have vanished, and that he is now someone else. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to a fortified base located in the middle of the mountain. An army of warriors masked in white robes prepares to start a mission. Their leader orders that the group's top priority is to capture the one with the ruptured meridian. He adds with a devilish look that they must eliminate anyone who gets in the way. All the warriors shout in unison, accepting their leader's orders with extreme loyalty. Back in the village, the wounded aggressor remains kneeling, begging for his life before the boy. The protagonist just watches him from above with a cold look and a mysterious glow in his eyes. The man realizes he will die right there if he cannot calm the fury of that young warrior. Desperate, he screams, asking for sincere apologies, and slams his head against the ground several times. With a trembling hand, he reaches into his robes to grab a bag full of gold coins he was keeping. He offers all his money, saying it is all he has, and begs for the boy's forgiveness. The hero remains standing, staring at the man relentlessly under a sky full of clouds. Young Shin says coldly to Deoksam that he knows very well who he is, and that he will not forgive him. He recalls that in the last 5 years, he was beaten and deprived of food and clothes by the aggressor. The hero continues listing the humiliations, saying he was extorted and trampled by the coward. In the crowd of villagers, a mysterious woman wearing a straw hat watches everything from afar. She is intrigued to see the boy's actions and mutters to herself. Surprised by his attitude, young Shin stares at the aggressor, thinking that although his body is different, he remembers every aggression. He states angrily that a fake apology is useless even if it comes with coin. The young man says he can see the falsehood on the man's face, even with him begging on the ground. Without hesitation, the hero raises the blood-stained blade to administer the final punishment to the coward. In the blink of an eye, he executes a fatal cut that ends the aggressor's life immediately. He proclaims coldly that whoever hurts the weak and does not honor the sword must pay with their own head. Upon hearing those striking words, the mysterious woman in the straw hat widens her eyes in shock. She recognizes that this phrase is one of the main mottos of the prestigious Blue Sky Society, with calm steps. Young Shin begins to walk away, leaving the man's lifeless body behind. The hero looks at the vast blue sky, trying to decide what to do from now on in that village. He reflects thoughtfully that he has no allies or known connections in that place. Suddenly, a desperate cry for help echoes through the village, breaking the afternoon silence. He turns quickly and sees one of the villagers running desperately from terrible enemies. The desperate man runs, pointing backward, and begs for someone to help him escape death. However, a masked warrior appears swiftly and delivers a mortal blow to the villager's back. The protagonist watches that terrible scene of senseless violence and grinds his teeth in pure rage. Panic takes over the entire village, and people start screaming for everyone to run. At that moment, warriors from the feared demonic cult of the sun and moon invade the location, spreading terror. The symbol embroidered on the invaders' white clothing reveals the drawing of a black sun over a red moon. The hero focuses his sharp gaze on that horrible mark and immediately recognizes his worst enemies from the past. He feels that terrible and evil purple energy emanating from them and knows it is demonic power. He is furious to realize that those demons are still alive after everything he sacrificed to destroy them. The invaders begin to murder the villagers mercilessly and shout to surround the area. Upon hearing their orders, the young man realizes that the demons are looking for someone with ruptured meridian. Furious at the cowardice of the assassins who kill innocents, he grips his sword hilt in hatred. Young Shin decides he cannot just stand by while the monsters destroy those defenseless people. His eyes fill with fury as he faces the masked assassins advancing through the village. He whispers with conviction that disgusting creatures like those should never exist in this world. The villagers scream desperately for the boy to run away, warning that he will die if he fights. He ignores the warnings and walks calmly, thinking that once you decide to hold a sword, the hero opens a slight smile and concludes that you must also know exactly the right moment to draw it. His former acquaintances watch him without words and are extremely worried about the boy's fate. The terrifying masked assassins finally notice his presence and run to attack him. He recognizes that his current body is weak and without internal energy, but knows his determination is still alive. Firmly, he holds Deoxem's sword, knowing his martial fighting style remains the same. The hero positions himself with grandeur. Proud to have been the legendary Sword Emperor in his past life, hidden in the vegetation, the mysterious woman in the straw hat watches the young man's combat stance. Intrigued, she is in shock to realize that he is using the stance of the legendary Three Forces technique. A brilliant yellow aura begins to surround the hero's body, and he enters a state of perfect focus. The woman is impressed by his concentration, noting that he is totally immersed in the technique with narrowed eyes and a calm mind. He accurately analyzes the enemy's movement. He realizes in a fraction of a second that there are 3 enemies on the left and 4 on his right. Raising the blade with both hands above his head, he prepares to perform the devastating blow. The boy advances with mastery against the first opponent who tries to strike him with his sword. To start the sequence of lethal attacks, the hero masterfully executes the first movement of the sky. The hero plants his foot firmly on the ground. Preparing to jump with speed and precision, he launches himself into the air, delivering a brilliant vertical cut against the enemy who was in the air. The opponent falls defeated to the ground while young Shin prepares to face the rest of the group. Several masked assassins surround him and attack at the same time, trying to corner the young man. The hero performs a sequence of fast and elegant movements, dodging the rival's attack. He begins the second phase of his attack and focuses his technique on the movement of the earth. Young Shin strikes with force and easily blocks the lunges of all the enemies. One of the aggressors jumps toward him with his sword raised in an attempt to hit him from above. With a calm demeanor, the protagonist waits for the exact moment the rival approaches to react. He gives a slight smile and finishes the powerful sequence by executing the movement of man. The hero delivers a devastating horizontal cut, piercing the adversary's chest in the air. He completes the combat stance while the blade slides flawlessly at the end of the strike. The opponent lets out a moan of pain upon realizing he was defeated in a humiliating way. The assassin falls to his knees, seriously wounded in the back, while the young man stares at him with contempt. With his last strength, the warrior looks at the startled young man and calls him a monster. Young Shin observes the defeated rival with a serious look, demonstrating that he has no pity for the weak. The enemy collapses lifeless to the ground, sealing the hero's undeniable victory in that fight. The hero is left alone among the bodies of the fallen adversaries on the bloody battlefield. The woman in the straw hat is amazed to note that he used only the basic technique of the three forces. She realizes in wonder that that boy has an unbelievable natural talent for the sword. Young Shin feels a hostile presence approaching and turns his head in alert. A new group of much more powerful assassins appears on the roof of one of the houses, watching the boy. The leader of the new group looks down with disdain, trying to understand if there were any survivors. Another warrior is startled to see that the first squad was totally annihilated by the young man. The protagonist raises his sword again, preparing to face the new opponent. However, a sharp pain hits the young man's chest by surprise, making him let out a terrible moan. He falls to his knees on the ground, using his weapon as support while trying to endure the severe headache. The hero remembers that this fragile body suffers from ruptured meridians and starts to break into a cold sweat from exhaustion. He despairs at suffering a crisis right in the middle of the battle and tries to understand the severity of the symptoms. The enemies on the roof watch the boy, kneeling and defenseless on the ground, noticing his weakness. The leader recognizes that the boy is the young man with ruptured meridians they were looking for. The boss coldly orders his subordinates to capture the boy immediately and without any injury. The henchmen jump from the roof all at once, advancing toward the vulnerable hero to capture him. Young Shin tries to raise his sword with difficulty while grinding his teeth to endure the intense pain. Suddenly, several bright blue lightning bolts fall from the sky, striking the enemies in the middle of their jump. The boy widens his eyes in amazement to see that powerful blue electricity appear out of nowhere. He looks at the roof and sees the mysterious woman in the straw hat wrapped in bright lightning. The warrior appears with an imposing demeanor, while blue lightning crackles around her. The cult leader is startled to identify her, knowing that the Blue Sky Society has discovered their plan. With extreme agility, the warrior delivers a devastating kick to the face of one of the masked men. She lands gracefully before the invaders, ready to defend the boy from any threat. The enemy leader tells them to prioritize the main mission and orders the others to delay the woman. The henchmen advance in a group against her, jumping toward her aggressively. Calmly, the woman draws her sword, which begins to glow intensely with a powerful blue light. Her eyes shine with a mystical blue energy as she focuses her devastating power on the rivals. In the blink of an eye, she executes fast movements, cutting the enemies with electricity. The warrior jumps with agility through the air, easily escaping the henchmen's lunges. She lands lightly on the village tiles, leaving a trail of white dust behind. The boy follows the combat, impressed by that woman's tremendous strength and speed. With one last fast movement, she severs the opponents in midair amidst a strong electric discharge. Mumyong is in shock to realize that the woman is using the infinite steps technique. He recognizes that that movement belongs to the Southern Sky Palace and wonders how she learned it. Suddenly, a masked enemy appears by surprise right behind Mumyong while he is vulnerable on the ground. The man reaches out his hand to capture him. Warning that he will go with them anyway, Mumyong tries to resist with all his strength, but his weak body does not obey, and he agonizes in pain. Before the enemy manages to touch him, the warrior appears from above, glowing with a strong electrical energy. With an extremely fast attack, she severs the arm of the masked man who was trying to capture the boy. The invader goes into despair to see that he was cut, without even managing to react to her strike. The warrior executes a clean movement, eliminating the danger in a relentless and overwhelming way. She smiles with disdain under her hat, warning them to take their dirty hands off the boy because she likes him. Mumyong continues trembling a lot from exhaustion while trying to lean on his scabbard so as not to collapse to the ground. But the terrible pain is too strong, and his vision begins to darken completely until he loses consciousness. The woman is startled to see the boy faint suddenly right in front of her without the strength to stay on his feet. She supports his body with care, worried, not knowing exactly what she should do to help him now. After some time, the young man finally begins to open his eyes slowly, feeling a little better. He gets up startled, letting out a moan of pain upon realizing he is lying in an unknown bed. The mysterious woman who saved him is sitting beside him and asks calmly if he has woken up. She shows sympathy through a friendly smile behind the transparent veil of her hat. Mumyong remains silent, trying to understand the current situation while the warrior watches him with patience. He thinks to himself how she masters the infinite steps if her sword style is not from the Southern Sky Palace. The woman warns that she calmed the cold energy in his body and guarantees that he must already be feeling much better. Mumyong is surprised because this rare condition of ruptured meridians usually affects only women. He remains confused, thinking about how she managed to contain such a devastating and dangerous cold force inside him. By her voice, he deduces that she is quite young, but possesses an extremely advanced and impressive level of martial arts. Suddenly, the woman apologizes for her lack of manners and decides to do something to introduce herself formally. She takes her hand to her straw hat and removes it, revealing her face to the young man who watches her with attention. Then, she adjusts her long black hair with delicacy, demonstrating total tranquility. Mumyong is met with the young woman's beautiful appearance, who smiles in a friendly way as she reveals herself completely. She says her name is Lee Se-ha from the Blue Sky Society and asks if Mumyong wants to join her. She offers to make him her disciple to heal him. But Mumyong is suspicious of so much sudden kindness. Lee Se-ha explains that she was impressed by his determination to fight the enemies even while being weak. Mumyong admits he is very curious, since he has never heard of anyone who has cured this condition before. The warrior gives a slight, victorious smile and says there is a very special reason for her to manage this. She points her index finger, concentrating a brilliant and powerful electric energy right before his eyes. She reveals that she masters a technique based on fire and lightning energy that would help open a man's meridian. Mumyong reflects in silence, acknowledging that that rare condition would not be cured only with common hot energy. He knows that cold energy accumulates very quickly, and any error in spiritual balance could be fatal. She explains that because he is a man, his natural vital energy in conjunction with the technique can generate the ideal cure. The young man realizes that the proposal makes sense and that mysterious lightning art is of an extremely high level. He concludes that if he manages to absorb all this accumulated energy, he will be able to become even stronger than in his past life. However, he realizes that there is an even more important detail he needs to resolve immediately with her. He asks for the real reason she wants to take a simple, unknown boy as her private disciple. The young woman breaks into an amused smile, finding humor in the direct and sincere questioning Mumyong did to her. She remembers when he said that whoever does not take responsibility for their strength does not have the right to carry the sword. Mumyong stares at her in silence, processing every word said by the warrior who seems extremely sincere. He clenches his fist tightly, thinking about the meaning of possessing a truly just and honorable heart. The boy then questions her about what would happen if he decided to refuse the generous training proposal. She warns that if he refuses, he will continue to be hunted by the demonic cult and will have to live in hiding forever. Mumyong retorts, asking why they do not eliminate him at once to avoid future problems with the enemy cult. She responds firmly that acting that way would make them equal to the villains and that their duty is to protect the innocent. She reflects that most people in the world prefer to sacrifice what is small in order to save greater things. But then she states with conviction that she wishes to be the person who protects exactly what was left behind. Mumyong listens to her with attention and is deeply touched by the young woman's sincere and kind word. He opens a slight smile, realizing that that woman is incredibly worthy of becoming his new master in this life. The boy bows slowly on the bed to pay his respects before the noble attitude demonstrated by her. He asks for sincere apologies for having doubted her sudden proposal at the beginning and begs for her forgiveness. Lee Se-ha finds his reaction amusing and asks with a friendly smile if he has finally made a final decision. The young man smiles back and confirms with total certainty that he is ready to follow her from that exact moment on. She celebrates the young man's intelligent choice and says she is very happy to have him as her new companion. Soon after, she suggests in a subtle way that the name Mumyong is not very suitable and asks if he has another option. The boy remembers that his previous name was bad and agrees that he needs a new name to restart his journey. The master agrees, explaining that a new name will also help to shake off the terrible demonic cult that is hunting him. He decides to adopt the surname Namgung in honor of the righteousness and the glorious history of his old spiritual home. For his name, he chooses Jun, which means to finish everything he could not finish in his past life. Lee Se-ha then pronounces the name Namgung Jun out loud to see how it sounds and approves the choice with much sympathy. The young man confirms that from now on, he will proudly use the name Namgung Jun to tread his new path. The warrior repeats the name Namgung Jun thoughtfully, trying to get used to the sound of his new identity. Soon after, she opens a beautiful, spontaneous smile and compliments, saying it is a very good warrior's name. Jun positions himself in a firm and respectful way on the bed, preparing to formalize the master-disciple bond. He says out loud that his new disciple, Namgung Jun, is ready to offer the proper traditional greeting. The young man bows deeply in a formal gesture of total loyalty and absolute respect to his new master. Lee Se-ha observes him with an affectionate and proud look, feeling fulfilled with her pupil's oath. He maintains the reverence for a few moments in silence, demonstrating all the seriousness of his solemn commitment. She accepts the greeting with joy, but warns soon after that things will start to happen very quickly. The master opens a giant, excited smile, saying the special martial arts training will start now. Jun is startled by her rush and gulps dryly, not understanding how things progressed so quick. While the sun sets in the mountains, coloring the sky pink, the preparations for the first lesson begin at the temple. She explains that the basis of any combat technique starts with a deep understanding of the sacred scripture. Then, she asks excitedly if he is ready to learn the famous art of the true heavenly thunder. Yang night soon falls over the peaceful village, revealing a beautiful starry sky that illuminates the temple roof. With enthusiasm, the young woman places the Book of Secrets on the table and officially introduces the cultivation manual to him. She is surprised by his different surname and comments in a curious way that she has never heard of any Namgung family. The master opens the ancient scroll and says that even knowing he knows how to read, she will make a point of explaining every difficult detail. The boy agrees politely, accepting her help willingly to start his studies without delay. Jun observes her and thinks she is an impressive prodigy who appears only once every century in the martial world. He concludes that the young master's talent does not lag behind his own potential from when he was in his past life. She points to the lines of the book, explaining how to guide the energy, while the young man analyzes the concepts with care. Lee Si-ha is completely open-mouthed to note that the young man understands everything perfectly with extreme ease. She is impressed and thinks that talking to him is like debating as an equal with a true ancient master. Time flies by, and the first rays of morning begin to appear, clearing the mountains around the village. The master looks at the window, surprised by the time, and asks with concern if he is not already very tired. Jun stands up determined, saying he has already memorized the formulas and wants to start the meditation immediately. She is thoughtful, knowing that normally no one manages to feel internal energy on the very first try. She positions herself right behind him to provide support in case something goes wrong and advises him not to push the limits too hard. Jun closes his eyes, concentrated, while his mentor reminds him that even geniuses take days to feel the energy flow. But the boy realizes that the internal structure of his current body is surprisingly magnificent and extraordinary. It only took a single complete cycle of deep breathing for him to start feeling the energy awaken. He notes that the size of his blood vessels is absurd, and that with his past memories, he will reach the top quickly. Lee Se-ha enters complete shock to see electrical sparks emerging around him and shouts in wonder at his talent. As his body was full of cold energy, the emergence of the true Yang's burning heat becomes sharp and strong. Namgung Jun slowly opens his eyes, finishing his first breathing and meditation cycle with success. Lee Se-ha starts clapping, full of pride, and compliments the incredible performance of her newly declared disciple. Soon after, she makes a challenging invitation and asks the boy to try to copy the movements she is going to make. With all her skill, the master concentrates and manifests bright sparks of pure electrical energy in her fist. The young man observes that display of power, thinking that in truth he should not reveal his total strength to just anyone. However, he concludes that he has no reason to hide his true potential from his own savior and master. The warrior enters total shock to see that the boy managed to imitate perfectly the flow of lightning on his first try. She opens a goofy smile, thinking she must have spent all the luck of her life finding a prodigy like him. Jun reveals that he also wants to learn sword techniques and fast movement steps, receiving her immediate support. She then suggests excitedly that they leave together toward the Great Blue Sky Society to search for new style. The boy is excited about the prospect of finding techniques totally different from those he already knew in the past. He knows that if he only replicates the arts of his past life, the same tragic fate could repeat itself in the future. To prevent the tragedy from happening, he decides to create new techniques that are much more powerful than those of his previous life. With this strong conviction, the two take their first steps on the road, starting a new and important journey together. While walking side by side, the young man begins to reflect on the mysterious history of the famous Blue Sky Society. He remembers that that great organization was born as a union of the sects that were devastated by the terrible demonic cult. It was created entirely by brave, survivor warriors from those families to protect what was left of the world. Jun questions her, remembering that the sect's main virtues should be justice and good deeds in the face of danger. The young man asks in a direct way if the top priority should not be absolute revenge against the demonic cult. But he remembers that the former leader declared that lives saved by heroes should not be thrown back into resentment. Their philosophy focuses on using these second chances to extend a hand to those in need and bring some hope. They choose to follow the true path of chivalry and compassion instead of getting lost in the hatred of pure revenge. Because of that, their immense library guards valuable techniques from extinct clans and donated by dedicated members. Lee Se-ha touches the handle of her weapon and reveals with a sad tone that her own family was also destroyed by the cult. The master's demeanor becomes momentarily melancholic as she recalls the painful loss of her home. Abruptly, she explains that her current technique is a combination of her clan's arts with the scrolls she chose in the sect. The young woman guarantees that he will also find something perfect there, and Jun deduces how the Southern Sky Palace arts ended up there. He calculates that about 200 years have passed since the fall of his old palace, and that society is safe. Seeing her sadness, Jun apologizes for having touched on such a painful and delicate subject of his mentor's past. But she soon recovers, embarrassed for having shown weakness before her disciple, and quickens her pace on the path. To change the subject, she tries to guess if he knows the famous natural wonders of that immense mountain. The two continue climbing the trail, surrounded by thick fog, as they approach the great secret hideout. She asks with care for the boy to follow exactly her footsteps, so as not to fall into any dangerous magical trap. As they cross the barrier of smoke, Jun lets out a sigh of amazement to see the landscape that opens before him. He is amazed to note that the new base is situated exactly in the ruins of his old home from his past life. Several guards and warriors bow respectfully, greeting the return of the powerful leader of the Celestial Sword Hall. She explains that everyone wears straw hats outside the base, but leaves the reason a mystery for him to discover later. As they enter the main lobby, she announces loud and clear that she is finally back from her external mission. An imposing elder with a long white beard named Yun Kyung-jong appears, asking if the boy is her guest. Lee Si-ha pulls Jun by the shoulder proudly and confirms with joy that he is her new and talented disciple. The Ink Master stares at him surprised, commenting that she must have liked him a lot to accept him so quickly. He explains that thanks to her guarantee, the boy will only take the martial test and asks when they want to start the trial. To everyone's surprise, Jun steps forward firmly and says out loud that he is ready to take the test right now. The elder finds the boy's rush strange, remembering he barely started training, but Jun guarantees that his thunder yang is sufficient. Yun Kyung-jong finds the boy's boldness fun and resolves to accept the challenge to see how far all that confidence goes. He calls a strong man and orders coldly for Jun to try to block at least a single strike from that experienced fighter. The huge warrior named Kang Mong steps forward with heavy steps, preparing to deliver the attack. Jun looks at his master, worried, warning that he has no weapon to manage to defend himself from the adversary. With a smile on her lips, Lee Si-ha draws her own mystical sword and offers it, saying a common one would break. The young man receives the valuable sword from his master's hands and thanks her by bowing deeply with absolute respect. Kang Mong asks the young man not to be reckless in combat and just focus on dodging his attack. He stares at him seriously and warns coldly that the boy could end up dying if he tries to block the strike. The warrior jumps through the air, delivering a devastating vertical strike while Jun watches everything from below. The last second before the impact, Jun draws his mystical sword in a blink of an eye, extremely fast. He blocks the heavy attack firmly, realizing the opponent's physical strength is incredibly intimidating. With extreme dexterity, the young man tilts his blade, making the adversary's attack slide to the side without hitting him. Jun takes advantage of the deviation's own movement to turn nimbly and pass behind the surprised opponent. Kang Mong is shocked and scared to realize that his strongest attack was redirected with such ease. The boy jumps and prepares a fast aerial counterattack to show that he also knows how to use advanced technique. The examiner manages to defend himself in time, but notes, perplexed, that Jun used exactly the same strike he had made. Jun lands softly on the ground and slides backward, finishing the confrontation with total elegance and balance. Kang Mong grinds his teeth, feeling his hands tremble intensely due to the strong impact of that counterattack. The man is impressed to note that the boy possesses devastating strength despite his thin and fragile appearance. He concludes that that tremendous pressure certainly did not come only from the effort of his normal body, muscles. Kang Mong stares at him with respect upon realizing that the young man used pure sword energy to perform that feat. Lee Si-ha starts celebrating by clapping joyfully for seeing her disciple defend and counterattack with success. The warrior is thoughtful, not understanding how he did all that if he had only learned one cultivation method. He looks at the ground and notes skid marks, realizing, astonished, that he was actually pushed back by Jun. The examiner is shocked to see that he was surpassed by a rookie and concludes that the sect's future will be well guarded. The elder watches it all from above and smiles happily to recognize the unbelievable natural talent that Jun possesses. The two fighters are surprised to see that the Ink Master has personally descended to follow the end of the test. Lee Se-ha jokes, thinking that if the Supreme Leader saw this, he would certainly try to steal Jun to be his disciple. The elder approaches in a friendly way and asks his name, receiving the firm answer that he is Namgung Jun. He places his hand on the boy's shoulder and officially declares him as the newest cloud-level member of society. His master smiles and wishes excitedly that he manages to evolve very quickly to reach the 4-cloud level. Soon Kang Mong approaches smiling and begins to explain how the hierarchy of ranks works based on the clouds. Reaches out his hand, offering the sect's official pin as a sign that he learned a valuable lesson from that fight. Jun admires the honorable posture of the examiner who accepted the defeat in a fair way and without holding any kind of grudge. The young man puts his weapon back and thanks him for the pin, bowing respectfully before his superior. Next, the master asks excitedly if her prodigy already has permission to enter the legendary weapon room, receiving a positive answer. She holds Jun's arm with excitement and drags him running toward the location. The elder watches the two walk away and thinks that, under her care, the young man will certainly reach the top of the world. He comments to Kang Mong that while she takes care of guiding the boy, they must provide the necessary support for the healing. The defeated warrior is left alone, staring at his own hand thoughtfully while repeating the name of Namgung Jun. He still feels the electricity running through his fingers and tries to understand how Jun managed to use so much force in one strike. The elder calls him aside, advising him to change his weapon, leaving the examiner confused, not understanding the reason. Upon looking carefully, Kang Mong notices a large crack in his sword's handle and is scared by the damage. As they arrive at the immense book pavilion, Lee Se-ha explains that the place is called the Room of Self-Reflection and Wisdom. Jun is amazed to see the gigantic scale of the shelves, realizing that that surpasses everything he has ever seen in life. He concludes, impressed, that even the old library of his royal palace would seem small next to all of that. The master recounts that unlike other sects that hide everything, there, everyone has free access to the arts manuals. She explains that the rule exists so that everyone gets strong to defend the innocent against the demonic cult. Jun realizes the secret and comments that, although there are no locks, his cloud level limits what he can read. He understands that the place's name serves for the warrior to reflect if they truly possess the qualification to read the manual. She offers to help him select an appropriate technique, but the young man prefers to resolve that issue alone. He explains firmly that he would like to search the scrolls and choose his own combat style. The master agrees willingly, but asks him to show the chosen book at the end so she can evaluate it. The reddish sunset covers the temple horizon, while silence settles in the great study pavilion. The young man searches the shelves under the attentive and curious gaze of a young librarian responsible for organization. The attendant watches from afar, worried, remembering that the master asked to give advice in case the young man felt lost. Se-ha warns the young attendant that she needs to leave immediately to resolve some matters of extreme urgency. The librarian, Yong-yi, remembers that the master asked to help the rookie in case he got lost through the large room. But suddenly, he hears a strange sound and realizes that Jun is throwing several books on the ground, one after the other. The young man is in shock and wonders with distrust if the boy is actually managing to read that whole pile. Yong-ai despairs to see the rookie throwing books into the air and realizes he is just making a mess. Thinking of scolding the one-cloud rookie, he approaches slowly to call the boy's attention. Without giving importance, Jun reaches out his hand and removes a simple wooden training sword that was on the rack. The attendant lets out a panic scream when the boy suddenly starts handling the training sword seriously. Jun executes a series of incredibly fast and complex aerial movements with the weapon, leaving the others stunned. Yong-yi cannot believe what his own eyes are seeing and realizes that that is simply unique. He notes that the manuals thrown on the ground were extremely complex techniques of speed and sword cuts. The young man realizes that Jun focused only on the fast attack manuals and is now concentrating energy on it. With a single movement from the boy, a strong shock wave propagates through the air overwhelmingly through the pavilion. The librarian's table shakes violently, knocking over brushes and scrolls in the face of the immense spiritual pressure. Yonggi gulps dryly, totally terrified, and thinks that the unbelievable speed of that strike was incredible. He concludes, impressed, that Jun's movement was exactly like the flashing of a strong lightning bolt during the storm. Suddenly, a mysterious and very heavy voice asks who he is. Calling the attention of the young man, who turns startled, Jun is met with a giant figure with red hair and a scary aura standing right behind the trembling librarian. The fearsome warrior stares at the boy intimidatingly and demands to know what that incredible technique from just now was. With crossed arms, he questions directly about the absurd sword movements and forms the young man exhibited. Jun feels a terrible chill upon realizing that the man emanates a gigantic and dangerous amount of demonic energy. He is indignant, thinking about how a demonic human managed to infiltrate the heart of the Blue Sky Society. The librarian remains huddled at his table, dying of fear while Jun maintains his defensive stance a few meters away. The young man tries to remain calm to reason and understand how such a dangerous enemy can be circulating freely there. Yonggi tries to appease the situation, explaining to the senior sword demon that the boy is just a newly arrived recruit. The giant pushes the attendant's head to move him out of the way, while Jun notices his 4 black cloud pin. The warrior in red confesses that he has never seen that sword style on any of the large pavilion's shelves. Realizing that the man does not seem hostile, Jun reveals sincerely that he is in the process of creating this new technique. The sword demon advances calmly over the discarded books, noting that the boy is not lying about anything. He opens a scary smile and proposes a combat, promising a great reward if the young man manages to satisfy him. The attendant despairs again, shouting that the boy is just a rookie who just learned the basics of energy. The senior tells him to shut his mouth while Yonggi prays desperately for the master to come back soon to save the boy. Jun accepts the challenge courageously and asks directly for a precious elixir as a reward for his victory. The man finds humor in that direct attitude and confesses he likes decisive young men who do not beat around the bush. He tells Jun to attack with everything, guaranteeing he will not use internal energy to leave the combat balanced and fair. The young man retorts boldly, saying the senior can use all his internal energy if he feels it is necessary. The sword demon lets out a monstrous laugh, thinking the boy is completely insane for challenging him that way. Without wasting time, Jun advances, delivering his first fast and lethal strike that cuts the air toward the adversary. The giant manages to block the attack in time, but is surprised to note that the boy's lunge was too heavy. He lets out a war cry, pushing Jun's blade back with all his immense raw physical strength. With agility, the young man uses the impact to jump backward, doing a pirouette in the air before landing safely. He prepares in an aggressive and firm combat stance, focused on using his agility against the giant rival. Jun creates a new trajectory, cutting the wind diagonally to catch the opponent by surprise from above. He perfectly combines the wind style with the flow of the 12 swords of the dying mountain in a single strike. The boy performs an extraordinary feat, multiplying a single fast cut into 3 simultaneous attacks. The sword demon widens his eyes in complete amazement to see the absurd complexity of that triple attack. Even surprised, he manages to block the 3 cuts at once, but realizes the young man used his own technique. The warrior in red smiles, fascinated to note that Jun was able to apply a brilliant variation on the basic strike. Jun feels that the weapon is very good and that he is finally recovering the incredible instincts of his past life. However, he knows that his fragile body with ruptured meridians will not hold out much longer and needs to win this fight soon. Jun attacks increasingly fast and precisely, seeking to overcome the sword demon's tremendous guard. He slightly adjusts the amplitude of his steps to gain a much more advantageous positioning in combat. The boy channels his energy, preparing to deliver the legendary 13th form of Eternal Thunder. Jun's fast strikes create bright trails of electricity that cross the entire immense book pavilion. The giant senior defends himself with difficulty, while the power of the young lightning illuminates the entire fight room. The opponent lets out an insane laugh, confessing that that battle is being the most fun of his life. Jun maintains total focus on the battle, preparing his weapon to deliver the decisive strike of his new technique. The young man's eyes shine intensely as he visualizes with precision the exact trajectory his blade must take. He manages to predict the perfect path he must travel to apply his next powerful martial form. Thinking of his wooden sword as a true lightning bolt, he prepares to make a direct and lethal advance. The young man concentrates to transform himself into a perfect electrical lunge capable of piercing any barrier. He focuses all his spiritual strength on the tip of his training sword, making the energy glow intensely. The young genius finds the most efficient path to discharge all his accumulated power on the opponent. Jun delivers the devastating 13th form, releasing an immense discharge that cuts the air of the pavilion. A brilliant and gigantic explosion of blue electricity swallows the sword demon in the middle of the main hall. However, Jun's hand begins to bleed due to the strong impact that his fragile body was not able to support. The giant protects himself and admits to himself that he felt his life in danger in the face of such spiritual power. He is shocked to realize that he was forced to use his own cultivation energy to not be defeated. The two fighters retreat, sliding across the stone floor while the smoke from the great collision begins to dissipate. The fearsome warrior with red hair observes the young man and has no choice but to acknowledge his worth. He concludes, impressed, that that boy was born with an absurd and divine natural talent for the art of the sword. Jun breathes deeply while evaluating the results of having utilized his newly created combat forms in practice. The senior compliments the fluidity of the style, worthy of a complete high-level technique, and asks if they are 13 forms. Yongyi watches the conversation, startled. While the giant in red asks what the official name of that style is, the young man opens a slight smile and begins to reveal slowly the origin of the name of his incredible technique. He declares firmly that his new combat style is called the 13 lightning bolts of the celestial flare. The attendant almost falls backward upon noting that the rookie created a brilliant technique of at least 3 cloud level. The senior in red stares at the young man in silence for a few moments, analyzing his posture with much interest. The man smiles from the corner of his mouth, revealing that he liked him and invites him to join his famous Inkwheel Hall. Jun is confused and tries to understand the meaning behind that unexpected invitation from the fearsome warrior. Suddenly, a firm and irritated voice echoes through the location, demanding to know what is happening there at that moment. Lee Se-ha appears, imposing, asking if the Inkwheel Hall has now become a place for stealing other people's disciple. The giant is not intimidated and responds with disdain that he liked the boy and sees no problem in inviting him. The master places herself in front of Jun and demands with anger that the sword demon take his hands off her precious pupil. The hall's atmosphere becomes extremely heavy and dangerous, with the immense fight intention of both colliding in the air. The man in red pulls the handle of his weapon, provoking the rival and asking if she is really looking for a fight. Realizing that the conflict will get out of control, Jun intervenes calmly, asking the two to stop immediately. The boy makes his final decision and declares that he accepts the invitation to go meet the famous Inkwheel Hall. Jun surprises everyone by saying he will go to the Inkwheel Hall when the moment is right. He explains that he intends to be the training partner of the master of that hall from time to time. The red-haired giant is left in disbelief at the boy's audacity, while Se-ha stares at him in shock. Then, the fearsome warrior lets out a boisterous laugh, finding the whole situation amusing. He says that Jun brought something very interesting and asks not to be made to wait too long. The warrior in red tosses a small black wooden box for the young man to catch. The giant says goodbye with a wicked smile, leaving Seha irritated and the librarian frightened. Without wasting any more time, he simply disappears at high speed, leaving the trio behind. Seha crosses her arms, extremely furious, and complains out loud about that annoying man. She asks what that box is, and the young man replies that it is the elixir he was promised. She explains that the white crane pill is great for those who are starting to accumulate energy. Jun asks about the invitation to the hall, since they were supposed to go straight to the Heavenly Sword Hall. The master says that new recruits go through a trial period and need to compete against each other. She explains that she cannot simply put him in her own hall without him winning the disputes. The young man closes the little box firmly and guarantees that he will win the test to enter her hall. Nightfall soon arrives, covering the entire immense territory of the society with the light of a mystical moon. Inside his quarters, the young man decides to swallow the energy pill to begin his cultivation. Suddenly, he feels a sharp pang in his chest and leans on the bed. Groaning in pain from the impact, the young man realizes in despair that he ended up suffering a terrible convulsion right after ingesting the elixir. Quickly, he sits in the lotus position to try to stabilize his flow of internal energy. He uses his burning yang energy to diminish the terrible pain caused by the strong convulsion. With that, his true Thunder Yang art improves as he focuses on the first point. Totally exhausted after the painful process, he lies down on the bed to rest his fragile body. Knowing that he cannot rush, he decides to focus on training his basic physical strength the next day. Dawn soon rises on the horizon, bringing a new day of hard effort for everyone in the area. The young warriors of the sect begin their intense training, striking the wooden logs with force. An elder with long white hair praises the large number of talented new recruits in that class. He is satisfied to see so many promising young people working hard in the training yard. Suddenly, the young companion notes the presence of someone different and asks who that young man is. The elder introduces young Dan So Hai, saying she has the talent to be a hall master in the future. The young man comments that despite being skilled, she still seems inferior compared to another great prodigy. The guide spots another distant recruit and realizes he is only doing physical strengthening training. The young man asks with suspicion if the boy will manage to win the test just by training like that. He adds that the boy should have mastered the basics before coming. Since the training time is short, the wise elder just smiles calmly and says they will only know the truth when the two face each other. He decides that the placement test will be done through a great martial duel between the recruits. 3 days pass quickly, and the entire combat arena is duly prepared for the big event. The audience, full of warriors, waits anxiously for the start of the duels to evaluate the newcomers. The masters and hall leaders take their seats in the gallery of honor to follow the combat. The official referee asks for silence from everyone in the arena and announces the start of the very first martial duel. A metal gong is struck hard, echoing the shrill sound that officially begins the competition. The judge reads the scroll and calls the combatants, Dan So Hai and Namgung Jun, to step forward. The girl warns that she will not go easy on him because he is young, and tells the boy to draw his sword right away. Jun tilts his head with disdain and replies with calmness that she does not need to wait for any of that. The girl is deeply irritated by the confident and laid-back attitude of her young opponent. Calling him arrogant, she unsheathes her blade and advances, dealing a swift attack against the boy with much coolness and precision. The young man focuses his attentive gaze on the trajectory of the blow coming his way. The sound of metal colliding echoes through the combat arena as the two swords cross violently. The young warrior widens her eyes in complete astonishment upon realizing what has just happened there. She is shocked to note that he blocked her perfect blow without even taking the sword out of its sheath. The judge announces in a loud voice that Namgung Jun is the great winner of the combat. The audience is incredulous to see that Dan So Hai was defeated with such ease, and everyone wonders who that boy is. The master in red notes that the boy is even more refined, and Seha agrees with a confident smile. The defeated defeated girl is completely in shock, unable to believe she lost in such a humiliating way. The young man walks back calmly after defeating his opponent with only a single precise movement. Without wasting time, the announcement of the next combat echoes through the large arena, calling the new competitor. The crowd gets excited upon seeing a young man with silver hair approach the courtyard for his fight. The spectators comment that that young man is known as the great rising star of Shangxi. The prodigy Baekri Cheong enters the arena imposingly, catching the attention of everyone present. The martial duel officially begins, and the opponent advances quickly, wielding his sword with the adversary is furious upon noting that Baekri Cheong did not even bother to unsheath his blade. Even with the weapon in the sheath, the prodigy blocks the attack with extreme ease and absolute precision. In the blink of an eye, he executes an incredible acrobatic movement, leaving his rival without reaction. The opponent loses his breath upon realizing the tip of the sheath pointed directly at his neck. Baekri Cheong maintains his cold and focused gaze, demonstrating his absolute superiority in combat. At that, he shifts his eyes slightly to the side as if he were looking for someone in the crowd. The audience goes wild with the lightning victory achieved with only a simple blow. The judge raises his hand and declares Baekri Cheong the great winner. Under the applause of everyone, Jun notices the prodigy's gaze in his direction and wonders if he was really staring at him. The young man gives a cornered smile, aware that he has no intention of handing over the final victory. On the tournament board, everyone was already expecting Baekri's classification, but an unexpected name appears in the bracket. The person in charge updates the table, writing the name of Namgung Jun as the great finalist of the day. The spectators are confused, as they had never heard of the boy before that tournament. The hall masters find it very strange for such a powerful warrior to appear without any prior rumors. Watching it all from afar, Seha needs to hold back a laugh so as not to give away the boy's secret. She walks happily, thinking it is obvious for him to be strong since he has a legendary master by his side. The big day of the tournament final finally arrives. With the two prodigies facing each other in the center of the arena, Baekri Cheong observes his opponent seriously, trying to decipher the mystery behind Namgung Jun. He notices that despite having an apparently fragile body, the rival hides a gigantic potential. The power of the sword that Jun demonstrated in previous fights was simply frightening and incredible. The energy that the boy emanates when fighting is extremely sharp and worthy of a true master. However, the young silver-haired prodigy knows he cannot afford to lose today. He remembers his clan's sacrifice and swears to himself that he will win the fight to obtain his vengeance. An immense warrior approaches the two finalists and asks if they are ready to begin. The big guy, Dan Jungse, introduces himself as the hall master and warns that he will be the official referee of the final. Jun positions himself seriously and focuses all his attention on the adversary in front of him. The judge wishes for a worthy combat and asks that neither of them leave there with regret. With a signal from the referee, the grand final of the martial tournament begins under the attentive eyes of everyone. Baekri Cheong positions his hand on his sword. Remembering the rumor that Jun's specialty is the heavy sword, he takes a firm step forward, preparing his body to initiate an extremely swift offensive. The silver-haired youth advances, determined not to give any chance for his rival to deal his first attack. Starting the combat with full force, he advances, dealing a devastating attack against the opponent. With much calmness and surgical precision, the protagonist only observes the trajectory of the enemy blade. He executes a spectacular dodge, leaning his body backward in an extremely fluid manner. The Shangxi prodigy widens his eyes, unable to believe the ease with which his rival dodged. Quickly, Jun adjusts his posture. Changing his center of gravity in the blink of an eye, he activates a fast lightning technique, completely surprising his adversary with his speed. Baekri Cheong realizes, shocked, that that is not a heavy sword, but a fast-shooting blade. A powerful electric boom echoes through the arena while the two swords collide violently. The silver-haired youth holds the impact with difficulty, wondering how that thin body has so much strength. Baekri tries to defend himself from the terrible impact while his own sword begins to crack in a worrying way. The entire audience watches watches the final moment of the combat in complete silence and with expressions of absolute astonishment, realizing that his weapon suffered grave damage. The young prodigy decides to ask an important question to his rival. He asks if Jun did not use a heavy sword in the past instead of such an incredibly fast weapon. The protagonist smiles calmly and replies that in the martial world, everyone needs to keep an ace in the hole in secret. The adversary lets out a light laugh, impressed by the fact that Jun hides such a fast and refined technique. Knowing that he no longer has conditions to continue, the silver-haired prodigy decides to admit his official defeat. Jun makes a respectful bow in gratitude and says that that was indeed an excellent martial duel. The entire arena explodes in shouts of celebration, celebrating the end of the spectacular dispute between the two young men. The masters are amazed to see that the newcomer managed to end all his combats with only a single blow. Seha watches it all with a proud smile on her face, aware of the enormous potential her disciple demonstrates. The official referee raises the young man's hand and announces to the entire crowd that Namgung Jun is the grand champion of the tournament. The young man agrees with his head, displaying a light smile of satisfaction for having achieved the desired victory. Master Dan approaches to congratulate the winner and hands over a black box containing the official reward. Inside the box is a very rare 300-year-old medicinal root, capable of granting an enormous amount of energy. Jun thanks him without demonstrating any exaggerated emotion, leaving the master shocked by such coldness before the prize. The master tries to convince him to join his hall, explaining that they are among the 3 best in the entire sect. Another leader in dark robes enters the conversation and guarantees that his hall would be the perfect starting point for Jun. The boy's final goal is to reach the top of the blue sky society to become strong. Enough for his plan. He knows he needs to reach the highest position in the organization if he wants to face the feared demonic sect head-on. At that, the young man only listens with a confused expression, without understanding the reason for so much insistence from those men. The master in red appears suddenly, affirming that the boy has already accepted to enter his own martial hall. Another strong warrior feels his blood boil with excitement upon seeing such a promising recruit emerging after so much time. He hits his chest with pride and promises to give full support to the young man if he chooses to join his combat hall. The leaders begin to argue comically while they dispute the attention of the new prodigy in a scandalous way. They continue shouting at each other, pointing out the reasons why they deserve to train the tournament. The boy thanks all the generous offers politely, but warns that he has already made his final decision. Under the attentive gaze of the leaders, he announces formally that he has decided to join the Heavenly Sword Hall. The masters accuse Seha of having cheated behind their backs, but she retorts, saying that Jun was already her disciple. The leaders complain, frustrated, but realize that the energy the young man emanates really matches her arts. With a very formal posture, the young man makes an official bow, asking for permission to enter his new home. Seha smiles victoriously before her rivals and accepts the boy's entry into her hall officially. Time passes, and Jun finally arrives at the Heavenly Sword Hall, located at the top of a mystical mountain. However, upon stepping into the location, the young man feels that something strange is about to happen there in the main courtyard. Suddenly, several veteran disciples armed with swords surround the boy, preventing him from continuing to advance. The veteran in the lead of the group comments that he has heard a lot about the incredible sword speed of the newcomer. He unsheathes his own blade with a sarcastic smile. Wanting to see if the newcomer is really that good, the veteran repeats that he heard many compliments about the boy's talent and that he wants to prove that personally. With an arrogant look, he challenges the champion, wanting to test if he is a real warrior or just a weakling. Jun maintains his unshakable cornered smile and replies that a true swordsman must speak through his weapon. Without hesitating for even a second, the young man takes his hand to the hilt of his blade, accepting the challenge of those warriors. With much elegance, he draws his shining sword and tells the opponent to take a step forward to start the test. The protagonist fixes his confident gaze on the adversary, demonstrating that he does not fear any of them in that courtyard. The veteran in blue robes advances with ferocity, determined to knock down the newcomer right in his first attack. He deals an extremely fast blow, generating waves of wind as he cuts the air toward the boy's body. Jun moves his feet with extreme lightness and agility, demonstrating impeccable footwork. In the blink of an eye, he executes a legendary multiple dodge technique, leaving several images behind. The veteran enters complete despair upon recognizing the infinite steps being used so perfectly. He cannot accept the fact that a mere newcomer managed to master such an advanced movement technique. Meanwhile, Seiha watches from the roof. Aware that the initiation test serves to put pressure on the newcomers, Seiha is impressed to see that Jun did not hesitate before the strong pressure and unsheathed his weapon immediately as expected. The disciples watch in shock, noticing that the newcomer's speed does not lag behind compared to the adversary. They realize that the boy is not just keeping up with the enemy's rhythm, but also taking control of the combat. The opponent feels overwhelming pressure as Jun attacks faster and faster, totally overcoming his speed. He is indignant to see someone deal such powerful blows with such a fragile physique and little internal energy. At that moment, he finally understands the reason his hallmaster chose that young man as her disciple. The veteran sketches a wild smile on his face, taken by immense curiosity regarding the newcomer's limit. He holds the hilt of his blade with even more force, determined to find out how much the boy can take. However, Master Seiha interferes in the fight and orders that the two stop the duel immediately. The opponent puts his weapon away and jokes, asking if she is worried about the disciple like a true teacher. He then turns to Jun, suggesting amicably that in the next opportunity, the two train using heavy sword. The veteran introduces himself officially as Gong Jun Am and says he is very happy to have the boy on his team. The protagonist makes a respectful bow and replies that it is a great honor to know his new veteran. The news about the arrival of the incredible champion spreads quickly throughout the training courtyard of the hall. The other disciples approach and comment fascinatedly on the rumors that Jun won the fights with a single blow. They give an official welcome and agree that the new youngest is so bright that everyone there must learn from him. The darkness of the night soon falls over the mystical mountains, bringing absolute silence to the accommodation. Alone in his room, the protagonist begins to suffer from terrible convulsions that seem to be getting worse. The young man sweats cold and realizes with despair that the cold yin energy has grown in a frightening way inside his body. His only alternative to survive is to use the yang arts, to contain the freezing flow until the pain diminishes. Suddenly, the door of the room is opened quickly, while a mysterious figure enters to help him. A warm hand, full of pure energy, is placed on the boy's back to calm the terrible internal burning. Upon feeling that familiar flow of power, Jun realizes immediately that his master, Seiha, came to his rescue. The woman focuses all her attention on guiding the healing energy to stabilize the boy's weakened meridian. He thanks her, relieved, while the master confesses that she felt the fluctuation of his power from a distance and came running. The boy explains that he needs to master the yang arts as soon as possible to manage to control this anomaly alone. The woman agrees, saying that the cold yin energy will continue growing very fast from now on. Knowing this, the boy asks for his teacher's help to start the process of absorbing the 300-year-old root. The master widens her eyes, slightly surprised by the boy's courage in deciding to consume such a powerful elixir. Right after, she displays a warm smile and accepts to help him in the difficult task of controlling all that energy. Without wasting time, the boy bites a piece of the powerful medicinal root to start the complex refining process. He recognizes that even though it is not the most perfect elixir of the sect, that mystical ingredient will be of immense help. The young man swallows the piece, concentrating on accumulating every drop of power to strengthen his own internal flow. Seiha positions herself behind him, placing her hands on his back to ensure that no vital energy is lost. He begins to circulate the raw power through the yang paths to avoid the energy damaging his meridians. A bright and extremely powerful aura emerges around the two, illuminating the entire room with intense light. The woman is impressed by Jun's perfect control, appearing like a veteran who has trained for dozens of years. She enters into shock upon realizing that the young man is managing to absorb absolutely all the energy of that rare root. The teacher wonders how that is possible, as she has never seen anyone consume an elixir without wasting anything. She is amazed to note the boy's genius aptitude. Despite his having been born with such a debilitated physical condition, she praises his evolution and says he can already try the promotion exam, while Jun thanks her for the teaching. Seha says goodbye with an affectionate smile, orienting her disciple to rest a lot after the intense. The beautiful master walks alone through the dense bamboo forest under the soft and bright moonlight of that night. However, in her thoughts, she still continues to reflect deeply on the boy's meditation techniques. A rush of new ideas and martial concepts begins to emerge in the woman's mind. Because of that moment, she runs through the forest, feeling that she will finally be able to break the barrier that blocked the evolution of her own art. A radiant smile emerges on her face upon realizing that all that new divine inspiration was conquered thanks to Jun. The dawn of the following day soon arrives, bringing a new routine of intense training for all the new warriors. Veteran Gong begins his morning demonstrating agile movements and precise sword cuts on a training log. He teaches a new technique to the disciples, warning that they need to master half of it before leaving on mission. Gong Jun orients the students to observe the sequence of movements attentively to be able to practice right after. While holding his training sword, Namgung Jun observes, concentrated, the start of the activities in the main courtyard. Suddenly, the young prodigy widens his eyes upon noticing something surprising happening right before him. To the surprise of everyone, the young man manages to execute the movement perfectly right in his first training attempt. The other disciples begin to gossip, suspicious that the hallmaster might have taught the technique to him before Gong Jun hears the rumors and becomes quite thoughtful upon remembering he saw the master leaving the young man's quarters yesterday. The instructor decides to go straight to the point and asks Namgung Jun if he really received private lessons from the master. The boy denies it calmly and demonstrates a tremendous dexterity with his blade to prove he learned everything alone. He compliments by saying that they can already advance straight to the training of the advanced great extension sword technique. His companions are scared and call the young man a monster for learning something so complex at an absurd speed. Gong Junam recognizes the boy's immense talent but fears the impact that this genius might cause in the other members. Despite this, the colleagues feel relieved to have such a strong ally and promise to train hard not to be left behind. The instructor accepts the challenge and decides he will personally teach the great extension sword technique to the boy. Gong Junam unsheathes his sword and asks that the young man observe with quite a lot of attention to manage to keep up the rhythm. Meanwhile, an important meeting of leaders happens in the conference room of the prestigious Blue Sky Society. The speaker in the blue robe brings worrying reports about the movement of rebel groups in Jiangxi province. Faced with the gravity of the situation, the red-haired warrior volunteers to intervene using force if necessary. The speaker soon changes the subject and puts on the agenda the permission for Namgung Jun to finally begin acting in the outside world. Seha reflects in silence that saving him from the terrible demonic cult was great, but sending him back to the world is too dangerous. One of the advisors asks if the boy is really the one who possesses the rare and dangerous 9 severe yin meridians condition. Another leader gets worked up, saying it is obvious that the rescue served precisely to avoid the young man falling into the hands of the enemy cult. He adds, irritated, that sending the young man out there now would be a piece of cake for the terrible sun and moon cult. One of the men hits the table hard to call Master Seha's attention and demand a definitive answer on the subject. The elderly leader of the table, with long white beards, observes everything calmly and asks what she thinks about that entire situation. Seha replies firmly and decisively that she does not see her disciple as someone fragile who needs to be protected all the time. She remembers the boy's striking words about how those who do not assume their own arts do not deserve to use a sword. The master revives the day she met him and how much she was impressed to see him fight with so much determination in combat. She insists that their duty is to protect the boy's righteousness and guide that great prodigy to become the sect's divine sword. The master's great goal is to ensure that the path of the young hero is always turned to the side of light and justice. The red-haired warrior stands up, irritated, and asks if they can only see the risks instead of focusing on Jun's genius talent. He points out that no one in that room has ever seen a young man with as much potential and capacity for growth as the boy. The redhead complains that they always cry for a lack of warriors but tremble with fear of cutting themselves when they receive a sharp sword. The speaker in the blue robe agrees with the allies' words and praises Namgung Jun's simply unique creation capacity. He reinforces that with experience, the boy will be an incredible force for the sect, and that it is rare to see such talent at this age. The supreme leader agrees that the boy is special and suggests allowing his exit provided they take due care. The elder authorizes the young man's exit, but demands that he be excluded from any mission related to the dangerous enemy cult. The other members of the table agree immediately with the great leader's wise decision and decide to follow the suggested plan. Even the impatient, red-haired warrior accepts the proposal with tranquility and settles back into his wooden chair. Seha sketches a beautiful smile of satisfaction upon realizing that her persistence worked and that her dear disciple is free. The scene changes to the port, where the young hero is oriented to focus on simple missions in Anhui province. For now, Namgung Jun confirms the mission details to investigate a rebel gang in the Dongling region with his new partner. While observing the beautiful landscape, the protagonist thinks confidently that he would be perfectly capable of solving everything alone. A flashback shows Gong Junam informing the young hero that his first official mission has already been duly assigned. The instructor introduces the warrior Heo Il to accompany the boy, as it is his first official trip to the outside world. Namgung Jun makes a respectful bow and greets his new veteran with much cordiality before they leave for the mission back to the present. The young man notices the companion's equipment and becomes curious upon noticing a small bottle on his waist. Without managing to hold his curiosity, the boy asks if that which he carries on his waist would be some type of alcoholic beverage. The veteran laughs awkwardly and confesses that it really is a drink, but guarantees that he only needs to drink a little when he wields his sword. The protagonist is even more worried with the revelation, but the companion suggests that they go to the market to obtain clues. The duo embarks on a small vessel toward their destination, while the sailors work hard to prepare the departure. A man pulls a thick rope with quite a lot of force. While trying to bring something from the bottom of the water to the surface, a poor gentleman is hoisted from inside the water, trapped in a rope cage, coughing desperately because of the suffocation. The leader of the bandits observes the prisoner from atop the pier and asks with mockery if he is finally ready to speak. He demands cruelly that the old man pay his debt once and for all, or hand over his own daughter as payment desperate. The father cries, begging for a little more time, because he would never hand over his own daughter to those men. The bandit loses patience with the prisoner's crying and orders coldly that they throw him back into the water once and for all. The rope cage is thrown into the water again, while the elderly man begs desperately for his life in the middle of the suffocation. Suddenly, a firm and mysterious voice orders them to stop immediately, catching the attention of the entire group of bandits. The boss of the criminals looks back, extremely irritated, and asks who the meddler is, who dares to disrupt the plan. The leader of the bandits notes the clothes of the young intruder and realizes immediately that he is part of the Blue Sky Society. The criminal observes every detail of the boy with a look of disdain, trying to measure the strength of his opponent. He thinks it an absolute absurdity to be confronted by a mere newcomer warrior from a cloud, and begins to laugh with contempt, but the young hero does not want to hear about conversation, and prepares his sword to deal a powerful electric attack on the enemy. He activates the third form of his martial art, shining with blue lightning that cuts the air at an absurd speed. In the blink of an eye, all the henchmen are hit by the fast technique, falling to the ground, completely defeated all at once. Jun comments with coldness that the dirty ways of unorthodox sects never change, even with the passing of time. From the top of the pier, it is possible to see the duo rescuing the elderly man, who is still quite trembling after going through that suffocation. Veteran Yahello asks if the gentleman is okay, while the poor man tries to thank them, even while being too weak to speak. The gang boss lies fallen on the wooden floor without any sign of reaction after receiving Jun's powerful electric blow. The elderly man runs away and thanks them loudly, while the two heroes only observe his departure without saying anything more. Yahello gives light taps on his beverage bottle and reflects in silence that Jun's speed really frightens anyone. He is impressed upon, noting the surgical precision of an attack executed with absolute calmness. And without hesitating a single second, the experienced warrior realizes that the young man evaluated perfectly the difference in level between them before dealing the attack. He realizes that the newcomer possesses a great reaction speed to dodge and counterattack in the blink of an eye. Yahello concludes that the boy's dexterity with the sword is too advanced for someone who has just become a mere recruit. He puts his bottle away, thoughtful, knowing that he will have a simply unbelievable report to deliver to his superiors. Time continues passing while the clouds float softly through the sky, announcing the arrival of a new phase of the mission. A watchman yawns lazily while standing at the entrance of the large enemy base, without imagining the danger that is about to arrive there. Upon hearing footsteps, the gate guard turns around, scared, and asks who is there in the middle of that sudden darkness. But the only answer he receives is the shine of a sword wrapped in blue lightning being unsheathed quickly. In a fraction of a second, the watchman is cut lethally, without having time to give a single shout to alert his allies. The silence of the night is broken only by the subtle sound of the hero's fast steps invading the enemy territory. Inside the hut, the criminals laugh loudly while they drink and brag about how they extorted money from that poor father. The leader of the rebels boasts, saying that they will profit even more by selling the kidnapped civilians to a rich man. Suddenly, the main door is kicked in violently, scaring all the bandits who were gathered in the hall. Jun enters calmly into the premise, accusing the group of stealing the blood and sweat of innocent people for their own benefit. One of the enemy warriors stands up quickly, wielding his weapon, and demands to know who the audacious intruder is. They notice the characteristic bamboo hat and realize, scared, that it is a warrior from the Blue Sky Society. The boss orders everyone to attack together, since the opponent is alone and will not have a chance against the numerous group. The protagonist only spins his blade, generating blue electric energy sparks, and prepares for the imminent combat. With a cold look, he raises his weapon, channeling an absurd amount of destructive power to end the fight soon. A strong electric discharge hits the ground, generating a shock wave that makes the entire wooden structure tremble at once. Several henchmen are hit simultaneously by the blue lightning, falling to the ground with grave injuries in an instant. One of the fastest rebels advances, dealing a double blow in a cross format to try to cut Jun's chest. Other warriors jump in his direction, throwing sharp daggers to flank the young man in all possible ways. Without moving a single muscle, the hero only awaits the enemy attack while the ground around him continues to break. The boy gives a cornered smile of disdain and murmurs that the movements of that group are simply too slow and clumsy. In an impeccable demonstration of ability, he rebuffs all the thrown blades without any of them managing to touch him. Next, the attackers fall helpless to the ground while Jun keeps himself imposing in the center of all that chaos. The last bandits run infuriated in his direction, shouting that the arrogant young man will pay dearly for mocking them. The criminals jump together, dealing sword blows in an attempt to corner the boy from above. One of them widens his eyes upon realizing that the target simply disappeared from his view in the blink of an eye. With agility out of the ordinary, Jun appears from above upside down, dodging easily the joint attack. He lands extremely softly and precisely, stepping directly onto the crossed blades of the adversaries. The hero executes a fast and precise cut, disarming and cutting the bandit's hands with his sharp sword. One of his his opponents falls to his knees, crying in pain and holding his wounded wrist after having his weapon snatched by force. The last rebel standing trembles with fear and calls the boy a monster upon seeing all his allies defeated on the ground. Meanwhile, in the back part, the criminals shout desperately, asking that everyone retreat immediately. The elderly leader of the gang appears imposingly and warns that he himself will take care of the meddling boy once and for all inside the prison. The henchmen responsible for the guard of the hostages have already been completely knocked out on the floor. Veteran Yahello appears from the shadows, cleaning the enemies with fast sword blows to liberate the people. The prisoners locked in the cells watch it all with a mix of surprise and hope upon seeing the rescue arrive. The veteran lets out a light laugh upon remembering how the young recruit told him to take care of the rescue while he attracted the attention. Jun comments on the incredible tracking abilities of his veteran, who replies in a quite modest way. The boy suggests that he himself will serve as bait, while the partner focuses on finding and liberating all the hostages. Jun states seriously that the security of innocent people must always be the maximum priority of that mission. Yahello reflects that he was a bit worried about the boy for having entered the sect only by direct recommendation. However, he realizes that the young man possesses both the necessary abilities and the character worthy of a hero. The veteran approaches the cells and calms the families, guaranteeing that the Blue Sky Society came to save them. With a welcoming smile on his face, he suggests that everyone leave there to breathe a little bit of fresh air outside. Meanwhile, the rebels watch in complete shock, unable to believe what is happening with their boss. The old leader is being pushed back by the relentless sequence of attacks dealt by the young hero. The experienced warrior sweats cold, wondering how a simple boy can possess such an absurd sword energy. For him, the opponent resembles a demonic spirit that spent entire decades training only the art of the sword. The villain shouts that he will order the kidnapped hostages to be killed if the boy does not surrender immediately once and for all. Upon hearing the pathetic, desperate threat of his opponent, the protagonist only lets out a light-cornered smile. Jun reveals calmly that the villain acted as expected and asks why he thinks he came alone to that location. The leader of the gang enters complete panic upon realizing that he fell into a trap and tries to beg for clemency. Without listening, the boy jumps with agility, dealing a swift blow to end the combat in a definitive way. The accurate blow hits the shoulder of the adversary, making the blood gush and destroying the ground around with the impact. The hero stops right next to his opponent, demonstrating surgical precision without demonstrating any emotion on his face. Infuriated, the villain tries one last desperate attack, advancing against the back of the young hero with all his force, but Jun is too fast and realizes that the adversary will not have time to react to his next defensive movement. With a firm and extremely fast touch, the boy holds the enemy investiture, preventing the blow from being concluded. A strong aura of blue energy involves the body of the protagonist, demonstrating the enormous power accumulated in his hand. An immense explosion of internal force happens in the location, generating a beam of light that dissipates all the dust around. A new and powerful elder in black robes appears, surprised by a boy so young managing to block his two palms. The protagonist focuses his attentive and analytical look over the new enemy, knowing that he is before a dangerous opponent. The mysterious elderly man demands to know once and for all what the true identity of the young hero in the straw hat is. He observes the sleeves of the boy from afar, identifying his fresh cloud position inside the Blue Sky Society. The villain complains, infuriated that the boy's actions ended up ruining his lucrative retirement business completely. He kicks the body of the former leader in red, calling him a fool for dying in such a pathetic way. Like any random dog, Jun reflects in silence, intrigued by the fact of there existing a larger organization behind that simple group of collectors. He walks calmly in the direction of the new opponent and calls him with disdain in a direct way while pointing his blade. The boy warns in an intimidating way that he would like to hear all the possible details about this lucrative business. He enters combat position, suggesting with mockery that the elder postpone his deserved retirement until they talk. The elder shouts, infuriated, calling the boy insolent, and begins to concentrate his immense destructive energy in his hand. He advances with absurd speed, making the dust rise from the ground with the devastating force of his frontal investiture. Jun decides to use the heavenly thunder palm technique he studied in the library and is surprised by its practical utility. The violent clash between the elder's fire technique and the hero's blue lightning generates a gigantic explosion of energy. The villain is thrown backward, with force, by the powerful impact of the collision of his martial techniques. The elder looks shocked at his own trembling hands, feeling the destructive effects of the electricity. He realizes with absolute astonishment that the young man in the straw hat dominates the legendary burning yang energy. Taken by greed, the elder advances again, determined to steal all that vital energy for himself. A gigantic fire claw advances in Jun's direction, who only observes the trajectory with much coldness. The violent attack collides against the young hero's bamboo hat, generating a strong wave of smoke and dust. To the villain's surprise, the boy manages to defend himself in a perfect way, using only his great agility. In a fast and accurate movement, the protagonist holds the sleeve of the elder's red robe with firmness. Jun uses the impulse of the adversary himself to deal a devastating counterattack that throws him to the ground. The villain shouts in pain upon feeling the strong pressure exerted on his body during the violent fall on the ground. He falls totally helpless on the ground, while his strange shadow energy begins to dissipate little by little. The elder activates desperately a terrible forbidden technique of energy absorption. To try to recover himself, Jun asks with disdain if his energy is so weak because of some bad cultivation method of evil sex. The elder is deeply irritated by the insult and accumulates all his remaining power to attack again. Completely insane, the villain shouts with greed, wanting to steal the boy's pure yang energy in any way. He reflects that absorbing this energy would be the definitive key to reaching the top of his martial path. The elder advances like a madman to grab the hero, believing that he will finally manage to hit his apex. With an agile and elegant jump, the boy dodges the uncontrolled attack and lands softly on the roof of the house. Jun asks if the villain allied himself with the dangerous demonic cult, only to get this bad absorption technique. The elder admits everything to the shouts, jumping in the direction of the roof to try to defeat the hero once and for all. He roars, saying that he will devour until the last drop of the protagonist's internal energy without leaving absolutely anything. The protagonist says calmly that he already heard everything he needed to hear, leaving his opponent confused and scared. In a fraction of a second, Jun deals an extremely fast cut that tears off the elder's hands, leaving him without reaction. With a ruthless movement, the young hero throws the mutilated adversary back to the ground with a devastating blow. The villain crashes against the ground with so much violence that the earth trembles, and several stones are thrown around, fallen and gravely wounded. The elder coughs blood while realizing that he no longer has any chance of winning that fight. Jun deals the final attack, wrapped in blue lightning, to end once and for all with the threat of that cruel man stuck to the ground and completely defeated. The villain begs for mercy, knowing that his end is very close. An immense column of electric energy descends from the heavens, hitting the ground and ending the combat with a deafening boom. The hero observes the final result, while the enemy's blood flows slowly from his own shining blade. Upon searching the adversary's body, the young man finds a mysterious book hidden and becomes quite intrigued by the content. Yahello arrives running at the location of the combat and asks, surprised, what happened there upon seeing the damage around. The veteran is impressed to see that the boy already resolved everything alone and jokes about the mess he made in the courtyard. Yahello recognizes the body of Elder Sang and explains that he was a criminal allied with the feared Sun and Moon demonic cult. The veteran reflects that defeating these two great criminal leaders all at once is a simply absurd achievement. He wonders in silence what type of recruit would manage to perform such a legendary feat right on his first real mission. The boy hands the mysterious book he found in the villain's pocket so his companion can analyze it with calmness. Yahello flips through the pages with quite a lot of attention and realizes, shocked, that the document is actually a type of registry book. Suddenly, a small boy approaches shyly and calls Heoil's attention with a quite worried voice. The little boy says, crying, that he cannot find his sister, and the veteran tries to calm him down with a gentle and friendly smile. One of the rescued civilians says that the bandits took several children from the prison just before the heroes arrived there. The little boy pulls with force the sleeve of the experienced warrior's mantle, begging desperately for help. With tears streaming down his face, the little boy begs that they bring his dear sister back safe and sound. Heoil notes that the registry book shows children sold to the enemy cult and suggests that they leave soon for the rescue. To the boy's surprise, the veteran warns seriously that his mission ends here and orders the young man to return to the base. The protagonist is deeply confused with his partner's decision and asks the meaning of all that. The veteran reveals that he received express orders to keep the boy totally away from any subject connected to the cult. Heoil turns his back and asks, please, for Jun to return to the Heavenly Sword Hall while he takes care of the situation. Jun tightens his fist with extreme force upon remembering the feared enemy cult and the reason for their limiting his action. He is irritated by the fact that the sect continues to hinder his advance, even after he demonstrated all his great strength. Heoil walks in the direction of the exit and repeats quite seriously that the location is too dangerous for a newcomer. The protagonist lowers his head in silence, trying to swallow his pride before his veteran's direct orders. He questions, saying that he is not a common recruit, while his travel partner stops and listens with attention. With a firm look, the experienced warrior reinforces that that is not just a friendly suggestion and orders the boy to retreat. Jun begins to walk determinedly back, but reflects to himself about the excuses used to abandon the people. He shouts, revolted, asking how he can ignore the injustice when he already unsheathed his sword in the name of the good veteran. Heoil sketches a light-cornered smile upon hearing the strong words full of justice of the young hero. He looks sideways, impressed to notice Jun's honorable spirit, which refuses to abandon the saved children. The veteran changes his mind, praising the boy, and accepts that the two follow together in the search for the cult's carriages. Heoil smiles confidently and reveals that his warrior nickname is the infallible target tracking sword. Without wasting more time, the experienced duo jumps among the trees of the dense forest, running at high speed. They move with lightness and agility, advancing quickly along the dark trails in the middle of that closed forest. The two warriors perform spectacular jumps, utilizing advanced locomotion techniques of the Blue Sky Society. The veteran leads the way, changing direction suddenly upon detecting a fresh new clue of the criminal. He points to the damp ground, showing recent footprints that prove that they are on the correct trail of the villain. The experienced hero recognizes the enemy's step technique and guarantees that the rescue of the children will happen soon. Jun reflects, amazed, upon noting that his experienced veteran's tracking arts reached an incredible level, even moving at high speed. Heoil does not let slip any subtle trail left on the path by the enemies. The protagonist wonders if the partner received the original teachings from some legendary master of the past. Jun understands finally the reason his veteran had tried to send him back, because of the immense danger of the mission. The young man supports his feet on the tree trunks and realizes that, despite training very well, he still lacks breath. Jun strives to continue and recognizes that his current physical resistance is barely sufficient to maintain the rhythm. Heoil warns in a low voice that they finally reach the target while Jun leans on a branch, totally exhausted. Right before them, two carriages full of prisoners advance in the direction of the river, where they intend to embark on a raft. The boy recovers his breath and suggests attacking immediately to avoid the kidnappers managing to escape along the river. The veteran agrees and alerts that if they enter the boat, it will be impossible to rescue the children alive from that location. Jun realizes, moved, that the experienced veteran was diminishing his own rhythm in the run only to help him. The young man asks for the experienced partner to go ahead to gain time, while he promises to reach him as soon as possible. The veteran touches affectionately on the boy's hat brim and asks that he save enough energy for the combat. With a spectacular speed shot, Heoil jumps in the direction of the enemy carriages, leaving a large trail of wind. Jun wipes the sweat from his face with determination, swearing that he will train harder when he returns from that complex mission. While one of the escort guards yawns boredly, Heoil observes the enemy convoy from from high up, preparing to act. The convoy guards talk, distracted, and share a drink without imagining the imminent threat that awaits them from high up. Yahello prepares his throwing weapons, planning to contain the kidnapper convoy alone for a moment. The first escort guard is hit by surprise in the throat by a fast blade and falls, emitting a groan of pain. The criminals enter panic, shouting about the presence of an enemy who uses hidden blades, and assume guard Yahello deals a relentless rain of throwing blades in all directions to neutralize the escort quickly. Several henchmen are hit mortally in the face, falling to their knees with grave injuries in the blink of an eye. The convoy leader blocks the attack, intrigued by the fact that the opponent only maintains distance using darts and daggers. The bearded villain sketches a perverse smile upon deducing the reason the mysterious invader does not advance for close combat. He orders them to continue moving the carriages and ignore the invader, since it is only a single man trying to delay them. Yahello realizes, irritated, that the criminals were extremely smart upon ignoring his provocation to follow ahead. Without a viable alternative to contain the escape, the hero takes his hands to his blade hilt, deciding to fight. He jumps in the direction of the convoy, dealing a powerful cut to the horse to paralyze the main carriage on the road. The wounded animal collapses with violence, knocking down the entire wooden structure of the carriage with a big boom on the ground. Terrified infantile voices begin to emerge from inside the wreckage of the cabin, begging desperately for rescue. Upon tearing the covering, Yahello finds several children locked and tied by ropes, crying a lot in the location. The experienced warrior is deeply indignant upon seeing those poor defenseless children in that deplorable state. Meanwhile, the second carriage tries to speed up the pace, but Yahello appears by surprise, jumping directly over the roof. He lands firmly and precisely over the roof of the moving carriage, preparing himself to intercept the rest of the guard. Suddenly, a strong warrior in black robes appears, dealing a powerful kick against Yahello. The impact pushes the experienced hero away, dragging his feet on the dirt ground with much violence. He is impressed with the enemy's strength, thinking that he would have died right away if he had been hit fully. The new adversary lands calmly, demonstrating total control of his martial combat posture. The villain displays a sneer, commenting that it is very fun to see the warrior tremble with fear. Yahello asks with irony if that would really be fear, and begins to drink from his beverage bottle. The opponent stares at him surprised and incredulous. Without understanding how the warrior manages to drink in the middle of a real fight, the veteran replies coldly that there exists only a single person in the world he really feared. In an absurd speed, the hero reappears, dealing a swift blow against the adversary's face. The villain enters panic upon realizing that his opponent's movements became too fast. Suddenly, he notes surprise that the entire combat posture of the veteran changed completely after that drink. The two warriors return to exchange fast blows, generating a strong energy explosion in the middle of the grove. The combat extends through the dense forest, with the sound of metal and impacts echoing through the entire territory around. Yahello uses all his dexterity and speed to dodge the enemy blows and prepare a fast counterattack. The strong warrior of the cult steps with force on the ground, destroying the ground to try to keep himself firm in the dispute. He deals a powerful sequence of kicks, forcing Yahello to defend himself with difficulty while he retreats. The enemy increases the pressure, maintaining a relentless offensive that leaves no space for the veteran to breathe. The hero realizes, desperate, that he is being pushed back and wonders if the rival is a cult official. He remembers that members of the feared demonic cult receive extremely powerful yin and yang martial art. Those superior officials who perfectly dominate those forbidden techniques arrive at frightening levels of power. The battle becomes even more intense and dangerous, with black silhouettes crossing the air at high speed through the brush. The evil rival mocks, saying that the veteran dodges very well like a true frightened rat in the forest. He reflects, aware that to face an opponent of this caliber, it would be necessary to have a master level. The veteran fears for his partner's life, thinking that it would be too dangerous to let the young hero fight there. Suddenly, Yahello notices a subtle opening in the enemy's guard. guard, who ends up losing his balance for a second. Seeing that rare opportunity, the veteran prepares to attack, knowing that he needs to resolve everything now. But in the last instant, the terrible enemy manages to foresee the blow and blocks Yahello's sword with dexterity. Yahello widens his eyes in complete despair upon noting that his perfect investiture was completely blocked. The villain opens a big, malicious smile, warning that it is a pity before preparing a powerful final punch. A devastating punch hits the veteran with so much force that it throws him violently away on the dirt road. Without giving respite, the terrible opponent advances quickly, dealing one more crushing blow against the fallen hero. The veteran shouts in pain upon receiving the brutal impact that breaks his guard and leaves him quite wounded on the ground. He tries to resist with difficulty, but recognizes that the rival's internal energy is immensely superior to his. The hero is thrown against the side of the damaged carriage, leaving deep cracks in the cabin wood. The children watch Yahello bleed from his mouth with complete despair, begging that he not die there. The warrior coughs blood but maintains his pride firm on his feet, saying jokingly that situation is shameful. The villain grumbles, irritated, that the Blue Sky Society always hinders everything and swears he will not kill him with ease. Yahello holds his blade hilt with all his remaining force, knowing there is no longer any possibility of escape. Suddenly, a fast figure appears, descending from the sky, and interrupts the tense moment, catching the attention of the warrior. The feared warrior in dark robes turns surprised, feeling the fast approach of a new and dangerous presence. Two black and white boot feet land extremely accurately and firmly in the middle of the dirt road. The newcomer positions himself before the wounded veteran, demonstrating he came to take control of the combat. The villain frowns. Without managing to understand who the new meddler is, who dares to get involved in that life-or-death dispute, June approaches calmly and calls for his partner, while Yahello watches everything relieved upon seeing his colleague return. The protagonist unsheathes his sword and asks politely if he finally has permission to enter the fight. The veteran reflects, moved, that instead of worrying about the risk, he feels only a deep relief in his chest. He sketches a sincere smile and asks for the young hero to take over the fight, recognizing he is indeed special. The villain in dark robes disdains the newcomer, asking with mockery if he is the weak reinforcement of that team. He observes June's features and notices, astonished, that it is a boy who has not even completed 20 years of age. However, the villain feels chills upon noting the impressive and sharp combat aura that emanates from the boy's body. The villain narrows his eyes, intrigued to notice something strange and out of the ordinary in the energy that emanates from the newcomer. He lets out a sneering laugh, finding the boy amusing, and says that the arrival of a mere Cloud One will not change their destiny at all. The protagonist retorts, saying that the opponent knows how to bluff very well while the enemy jumps to deal a new blow. The villain executes an overwhelming aerial kick, shouting with hatred that the young hero continues to be just an insolent boy. June dodges the attack with extreme ease, recognizing that in terms of martial level, he is in a theoretical disadvantage. The protagonist analyzes the techniques, knowing that the basic phases of combat focus on the refining and internal energy circulation. He remembers that reaching the martial apex allows channeling all this vital energy directly outside of the physical body itself. With that, the strength and destructive power of every sword blow increase in a simply frightening way in the fight. The villain attacks infuriated, cursing the young man as a mere Cloud One, but Jun blocks the impact perfectly using his sharp weapon. The opponent asks what the boy intends to do in that extreme danger situation, while the two continue in combat. Small electric blue lightning sparks begin to accumulate on the legs of the dangerous and strong enemy in black robes. The villain widens his eyes, confused, and lets out a sound of surprise upon noticing the strange energy fluctuation around him. Taking advantage of his opponent's hesitation, the young hero advances relentlessly and very fast through the middle of the dirt road. Jun focuses his mind, aware that sword techniques and internal strength are only basic tools of a true warrior. He executes a spectacular rotary movement that cuts the air and hits the opponent, grazing him with extreme speed and mastery. The villain tries to retreat desperately, but the protagonist remains glued to his body without giving any chance of escaping. escaping them. The enemy scolds, calling Jun a persistent plague, while he tries to dodge the sharp blade that advances in his direction. The young man executes a fast sweep combined with a precise cut of his sword, demonstrating excellent agility in combat. Infuriated, the criminal deals a powerful frontal kick, shouting for the protagonist to give up and die once and for all. With his look totally fixed on the dangerous enemy, the boy thinks firmly that he is capable of overcoming everything with his sword in hand. A flash of blue lightning and energy cracks in the air, marking the decisive moment when the two forces collide brutally in the grove. The cult warrior stands with his back under the sun's light while smoke rises from his body after the final blow impact. He coughs blood through his nose and mouth without managing to understand how a simple newcomer of such a low level managed to defeat him. The villain collapses on the dirt ground, totally defeated, leaving Jun imposing in the courtyard with his shining sword in his hand.